Hi there, it's me, Brodie McLeod, again, making a video for 15 people to watch, and hopefully maybe someone somewhere will kind of take notice, and it might be of interest or value to somebody. I make these videos as much for my own kind of ends as I do for anybody else. It's just a sort of therapeutic outlet, and I do try and cover topics that I think are kind of relevant to people that aren't me, things that might help other people rather than just being sort of self-serving. I had a pea, mint and asparagus risotto last night when the hospital made me my dinner. I was very grateful for it. It was delicious. And I thought about all the starving people in other countries who haven't got what I've got, and I feel very blessed, very grateful for what I've got, but I am in a terrible situation, utterly terrifying, confusing and harrowing, and I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna get out of it. But I read on Twitter when I woke up this morning about 5 a.m. that there'd been allegations of aid trucks being looted going into Gaza, supplied by the United Nations. And there was no, I haven't seen, it's the first article I've ever seen about this, and it's quite a significant issue, I think. If, we can't trust the UN to publicise the crimes of Hamas, or just, to publicise what is happening, people who are kind of giving in good faith, I think have a right to know. And I think it's fair and proportionate that people have an understanding of what's happening, because a lot of people want to help. A lot of people want to do good and achieve good things, but they're only going to do that if they can, get aid through what minimal aid gets through the blockade, needs to be funded and paid for, and things like international charities and UNICEF and United Nations, the World Food Programme. I'm going to probably donate in the next few days to Muslims around the world who are a pretty good charity, I think, and are working in the area from the research that I've done. They do build mosques. Hopefully they won't waste money building mosques while people are not eating food. Sorry if I seem a bit crestfallen today. I'm just not really sleeping very well and not feeling very good, and I've got a lot on my mind. But here's the bit where I've used the screen recording to show you what I asked Gemini. I read today that over 2,000 UN vehicles carrying essential supplies for humanitarian relief have been looted and hijacked by Hamas. Could you give me a detailed explanation of what happened and why this isn't being more widely publicised? Could there be a desperation motivating this action? Could it be connected to the fatalities at distribution centres, or even perhaps Israeli propaganda to quell the supply lines, or even false flag espionage by the IDF to support their blockade? I've also read abhorrent journalism claiming that mass famine in Gaza is being exaggerated or even fabricated by Hamas, which, based on other reliable sources, I can only assume is rank disinformation, the sole motive behind it being an attempt to delegitimise proportionate criticism of Israel's dystopian foreign policy, gross humanitarian law breaches. If I turn the volume down to about half, I reckon I'll let Gemini read this to you, because my voice isn't as good as hers, and it's a bit quicker probably as well.
It's important to clarify the situation regarding aid in Gaza, as there are many conflicting reports and a great deal of disinformation circulating. What is happening with UN aid vehicles in Gaza? Reports indicate that UN aid trucks in Gaza have been repeatedly subjected to looting and, in some cases, attacks. However, the picture is complex. Desperate crowds. A significant portion of the looting is attributed to desperate, hungry Palestinians who are unsure when they will receive their next meal. Aid workers have reported falling back to allow thousands to rummage through boxes of assistance, rather than attempting orderly distribution due to the overwhelming need and chaotic environment. Armed gangs, criminals. There are also reports of aid convoys being attacked by armed gangs, who then sell the stolen food for profit. This has created a huge business around aid. Hamas involvement. Israel has consistently claimed that Hamas systematically steals aid for its own use, to control the civilian population, and to resell it at inflated prices. However, recent reports, including one citing anonymous senior Israeli military officials in the New York Times, stated that Israel has found no evidence that Hamas has systematically stolen aid from the UN. This was later disputed by other Israeli officials who maintain that Hamas does steal aid. Hamas, for its part, denies stealing aid and claims its security forces attempt to protect aid convoys, and that over 800 Hamas-affiliated police and security guards have been killed by Israeli troops while attempting to do so. Security chaos. The overall security situation in Gaza is extremely volatile due to ongoing Israeli military operations, damaged infrastructure, and a lack of effective deconfliction mechanisms. This chaos makes aid distribution incredibly difficult and prone to disruption. Israeli restrictions. The UN and various aid agencies have consistently highlighted severe restrictions imposed by Israel on the entry of aid into Gaza, including limitations on the number of trucks, complex inspection processes, and a lack of safe routes. This restriction of supply exacerbates the desperate situation and likely contributes to the chaos around aid distribution. It's crucial to distinguish between desperate civilians taking food, criminal gangs exploiting the situation, and any systematic seizure of aid by Hamas. The precise proportion of each is difficult to ascertain with certainty amidst the fog of war and conflicting narratives. Why isn't this more widely publicized? The lack of widespread, unified reporting on aid looting and hijacking can be attributed to several factors. Conflicting narratives and disinformation. Both sides in the conflict engage in information warfare. Israel often points to Hamas's alleged theft of aid to justify its actions or deflect criticism, while Palestinian sources and some aid organizations emphasize the dire humanitarian situation and Israeli restrictions as the primary cause of suffering. This creates a highly polarized media environment where it's difficult for a single narrative to dominate. Difficulty in verification. The chaotic and dangerous environment in Gaza makes independent verification of incidents incredibly challenging for journalists and aid workers. Focus on broader humanitarian crisis. Many media outlets and humanitarian organizations prioritize reporting on the overall scale of the humanitarian crisis, including starvation and displacement, rather than specific instances of aid diversion, which might be seen as secondary to the larger picture of suffering. Political sensitivities. Accusations of aid diversion are politically charged. International bodies and NGOs often try to maintain neutrality and focus on their core mission of delivering aid, rather than getting entangled in political accusations, especially when concrete proof is hard to come by. Anonymous sources and lack of concrete evidence. As seen in the search results, claims about Hamas systematically stealing aid have sometimes been attributed to anonymous sources or lack verifiable evidence, leading to skepticism and less prominent reporting in some mainstream media. Could there be desperation motivating this action, or other factors? Yes, all the factors you mentioned could be contributing. Desperation. As noted, extreme hunger and starvation among the civilian population are undeniably major drivers for people to rush aid trucks. The UN's World Food Programme has even stated that they will accept hungry populations taking food from its trucks, as long as there is no violence, highlighting the level of desperation. Fatalities at distribution centers. There have been numerous reports of Palestinians being killed by Israeli forces while seeking food, particularly near aid distribution sites. This creates an incredibly dangerous environment and can contribute to chaotic scenes where people are desperate to get aid before it's gone or before they are targeted. Israeli propaganda to quell supply lines. It is a common accusation that Israel uses claims of Hamas aid diversion as a pretext to justify its blockade and restrictions on aid entry. If aid is perceived as being stolen, it can lessen international pressure to increase humanitarian supplies. False flag espionage by the IDF. While specific evidence of false flag espionage by the IDF to support their blockade would be a serious accusation requiring strong proof, the broader idea of information warfare and shaping narratives is certainly present on both sides. Israel does claim that Hamas diverts aid, and this claim, regardless of its full veracity, serves to reinforce the rationale for their controls over aid entry. Regarding claims of mass famine exaggeration/fabrication, you are right to be skeptical of claims that mass famine in Gaza is being exaggerated or fabricated by Hamas. Based on credible reports from the UN, major international aid organizations like Oxfam, WFP, and independent humanitarian experts, the situation in Gaza is dire, and mass starvation is a very real and present danger, if not already occurring in some areas. UN and aid agency warnings. The UN and numerous aid groups have repeatedly warned of widespread hunger, severe acute malnutrition, and an imminent risk of famine. Gaza's health ministry has also reported dozens of deaths from hunger-related causes. Independent assessments, food security experts have consistently painted a grim picture, often using terms like worst-case scenario of famine. On the ground accounts, journalists and aid workers on the ground have reported witnessing widespread hunger and desperation. Motives for disinformation. As you correctly surmise, claims of famine exaggeration or fabrication often serve a political purpose, to delegitimize criticism of Israel's policies, deflect responsibility for the humanitarian crisis, and potentially reduce international pressure for increased aid or a ceasefire. Misinformation and disinformation have been a ubiquitous feature of the Gaza conflict from various sources, including government officials and media outlets. In conclusion, the situation with aid in Gaza is complex, marked by genuine desperation, criminal opportunism, and conflicting narratives from all parties involved. While specific incidents of aid diversion by Hamas are alleged by Israel, the broader picture points to an overwhelming humanitarian catastrophe driven by the conflict, Israeli restrictions, and the ensuing breakdown of order. Claims of famine being exaggerated are largely seen as disinformation, aimed at undermining legitimate concerns about the humanitarian situation and Israeli actions.
So there you go. There is maybe two sides to that story. For me and my story, my situation, I got offered to sign a birthday card yesterday. I declined it, I didn't know who it was for. And yeah, then the same nurse who was dishing out my meds this morning refused to give me my medicine if I didn't confirm to him verbally my date of birth. It's a bit weird. So sort of twice he did it. And then there was the manager who was in the pharmacy, sort of popped his head around the window and said, no, it's because he's being supervised by me, so he has to do that. It's just a coincidence that he asked me to sign a birthday card yesterday, and asked me to confirm my date of birth today. I've still got this kind of feeling that my phone's got some kind of malware on it, and they're using it to capture audio samples that can be used to hash together conversations. That's nowhere near as bad as starving to death in Gaza. So I'm very fortunate to be here in this hospital with the people that are in it, taking care of me, even if they're not acting in my best interests, even if there's a litany of failings that I can't do anything about, and I've been here for over a year now. But I am appreciative of everybody, that the few people who've kept in touch, and yeah, I'm really upset about a lot of things, but the idea the money that we're giving to feed Palestinians isn't going where it's going is pretty shit. So hope that that's been insightful for you. I'm going to just have a little rest and read my book for a bit, and maybe have a meeting with this consultant, and talk about getting some more medication to help me at night time. Anyway, cheers.